Well, today on the Cento Leadership Podcast, I've got Anna Yates, VP of Talent and Culture at ZBeta. ZBeta.
ZBeta.
Yeah, ZBeta. Okay, we got there. We got there in the end. I knew I was going to get that bit wrong. It's just the pronunciation. And we're going to talk today about the increase or the rise in AI applications for jobs by candidates, because I think you've experienced that, Anna, where people have obviously applied for roles. And when you dig beneath the surface, they're not quite what you was expecting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you, Brett, for having me today. I think, it's something that I experienced in the last few weeks. And I know that, you and I are in a working group together, and it was a question I posed kind of to a broader group as far as, are folks seeing this happen and when they're reviewing resumes? And I think definitely we're seeing an uptick in folks leveraging AI to help them, prepare for job applications. So whether that's writing a resume, whether that's applying for jobs, whether that's with their interview prep. And, I think from my perspective, I absolutely think that AI is a tool that should be leveraged and used, but I think it's finding what is the appropriate use of it from both a candidate perspective and from an employer perspective. And, I think where I got caught, when I was reviewing resumes was I was looking through and was like, gosh, wow, this resume looks great. This person perfect. They check all the boxes and we even went into and selected them to go through to a phone screen and they were able to pass a phone screen with me, which was surprising, after I kind of dug in a little bit deeper with the hiring manager. And, I think there are some, now that I have awareness around it, there are probably some things that I would do differently. And I do differently now as I'm screening resumes.
I know there's a couple of tools. I mean, we've looked at it ourselves, but there's a couple of tools out there that are free, that will apply for jobs while people are sleeping. But there's one in particular. I mean, it's called AI Apply. I don't mind saying what the product is, but it also claims to be able to get past an ATS. But also, if someone's then on a Teams interview or a Zoom interview, the AI will deliver the answers of the questions that are being asked. But this for me, as you say, everybody needs to be able to utilize AI. It's a tool that everyone needs to be able to use. But I think the whole using it to apply for jobs that maybe you haven't got the skill set for, ultimately you're going to be found out. Whether it's an interview stage or whether you start the job, you're going to be found out.
Yeah. And I think, I recognize that, the job market looks different for a lot of folks, kind of depending on what roles you're looking for, what your experience is. And I can see the appeal of trying to kind of work your experience into another job to show that you're qualified for it. And I think, there's ways to do that are authentic and genuine. But when you are using AI as a way to misrepresent your experience, eventually it is not going to serve you well, right, as an applicant. So either you're going to get found out during the interview process, or you're going to start the job and you're just not going to be set up for success. And we all know how that is going to end as well. And so, I think from an employer perspective, some things that I am doing differently now, now that I have this more awareness around it is, we human review every application that comes in to ZBeta. So, and that's a lot, and my team is very small, but it is important to me that we do have that extra set of eyes on it. So yes, ATSs can help filter candidates and say, oh, this person's qualified. But I think there is and always should be a human level of interaction with a resume to really determine, is this person actually suited for the role? So I think there's that piece of it. looking at someone's resume, and then if it's someone that I'm moving forward to an interview process, whether that's a phone interview or a manager interview, taking a look at their LinkedIn profile and, is the resume matching the experience that they've got posted on their LinkedIn profile? The experience I had I done that, it would have flagged to me pretty quickly. That the person probably didn't have the skills or the experience we were looking for. I recognize that's time consuming, right? So if you are handling a lot of applications and you're handling a lot of requisitions, that is an extra step in the process. But I think in the long run, it is going to save you time, right? So had I done that, I probably would not have moved that person forward to a phone interview and saved myself 45 minutes.
Absolutely. I mean, it brings into question people's, whether they're ethical, trustworthy, honest.
Yeah.
The whole thing. And again, yes, people need to understand AI and they need to actually use it as a tool, similar to we're using, Teams as a tool today.
Yeah.
But knowing when to use it and when not to use it. And I think that's the danger. And this could be almost a steam train that runs away with itself.
Yes.
And ends up out of control almost.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, especially in the type of industry that we're in, security, like the trustworthiness of someone is really critical to the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
And I see the benefit of using AI to help you write a resume. But I would say, from a candidate perspective, it's a great tool, but you should always be reviewing what is, what the output is of it, and tweaking it to make sure that it's in your voice, making sure that it is factual and an accurate representation of your experience. And, from a employer standpoint, when we're looking at resumes, there are things that I think we can be doing that will give us those indicators of whether or not this resume was AI generated. So, one is obviously that human review. So having you and maybe even an extra set of eyes looking at it, especially on those ones that are like looking maybe too perfect of a candidate. As I mentioned, kind of comparing a resume to their LinkedIn profile, seeing if there are any discrepancies there, leveraging your interview process. So maybe you've done all of that and then you're getting to a place where you're going to do the interview. I think there are ways you can structure your interview questions that, if they are using something like an AI agent to help them during the interview, that you can really kind of dig in and really kind of start teasing out what their actual experience is.
Competency-based questions basically give me an example of them, and that's going to be difficult for an AI bot, I would think, to challenge or to come up with the answers. But the other question that springs to mind for myself, again, if you're hiring people that are going to be remotely onboarded and remotely employed, that presents another set of danger, another issue, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we here at ZBeta, we're a 100% remote company. So all of our employees are working from home. And, I think about in a more traditional setting, so whether that's in office or hybrid, likely in the interview stage, there's going to be an in-person conversation. And if someone's leveraging tools, they're not going to have those available to them to use. In a remote setting, that obviously is very different. And so I think part of, how you structure interviews, especially, is are you using something where you are using a tool to assess their experience, right? So for us, we use a few of our roles use a program called Revit. And so we incorporate that into our interview process. So we can actually see whether or not the person has the experience that is required for the job. So that's one way. But I think, I think there are AI is not going anywhere. It will
No,
continue to be here. And so I think it's really figuring out those ways that it can be used as a tool to support someone, whether that's their interview or even in their work, but making sure that they're doing it in a ethical way, I think is really important.
absolutely. Yeah. And again, have you considered like the remote onboarding of candidates, of course, or employees that they then become? Have you considered changing your processes and procedures there because of potential AI traps?
Yeah, yeah. That's a good question. I feel like we have a good thing going for us. So we do, at some point in our interview process, folks will have a video call. And so I
Yeah,
think there are ways you could kind of pick up on whether or not someone's using something to help them through the interview process. Um, the work that we do here at ZBeta is incredibly collaborative. And so I think, if someone's trying to use a tool, an AI tool in their day-to-day work, I think it would be caught pretty quickly just in the way
yeah,
that our teams work together. But it's absolutely something that we are talking about and just thinking about, like, how do we
yeah.
ensure that if folks are using it, that they're doing it in the appropriate way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody's got to revisit their hiring process, onboarding process, because
Yeah.
this is just going to become more and more prevalent.
Yes.
There's another tool that I came across. It's even called Lazy Apply. I mean, how how easy can you make it? And a lot of them have got free versions where people can sit there applying. And I mean, obviously we recruit and we get people applying for jobs all the time, but the amount of people that you apply that then you can't get hold of.
Yes.
And I suspect that is an AI bot or an AI resume that's been submitted or something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
it's
so I mean, oh my gosh, I feel like we could talk about this. We could go down
yeah,
all the kind of like wormholes of that. So what you're saying is that perhaps it's not even an actual person behind it. It is
no,
a, a bot applying for a
yeah,
job and then potentially
yeah,
getting hired. Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, at some point they're going to have to interact with us because we have to
yeah,
go through a EI or a e-verify process and all of that piece. But I think the other thing that I think about is how much time gets wasted, right? So it's
yes,
like if you get to a place where you're like, oh, this person it's not a person,
no,
perhaps, or it's a candidate that's actually not qualified for the job. There's a lot of time that's wasted or spent in that process. And so trying to figure out how do we assess for it early in the process and be able to kind of weed out.
yeah, and then and again the conversation generally in the news and everything else, AI is going to replace everybody and everybody's going to be out of work and everything else. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was Simon Sinek said the one guy that's not frightened of this is the plumber, obviously, because you're not going to get an AI bot to replace a plumber. But I think that the more that these the easy apply or whatever they're called in our world, the more you're going to need even more human interaction to trap the bots,
Yeah.
basically. So I think it's going to become more labor intensive rather than less labor intensive.
Yes.
Certainly for specialist roles, and you say specialist roles in the security industry, lower level roles maybe, you know, manual roles. You might be able to get away with it. Maybe people that are stacking shelves in supermarkets or
Yeah.
grocery stores, something like that. Maybe, who knows? But I think certainly in the more specialist roles, it's going to need more and more human interaction to find out whether the people are genuine or real.
Yes. Yeah, especially in a remote setting. I think,
Yeah,
obviously if you're 100% in office, you're going to know real quickly whether or not
yeah,
someone's going to,
yeah,
walk in through the door for that interview. And as a company that is 100% remote, there are things that we have to start thinking about as far as our application process and how
yeah.
we're vetting candidates to ensure that we are getting not only the best candidates, but also candidates that are true candidates.
Yeah. And is it something you've recently just seen coming through in job applications, or have you seen it increasing?
So it's really interesting. I had a role a couple of weeks ago, maybe almost a month ago now, where I had two resumes that I had that exact, they essentially had taken our job posting and then I think just use that and said, use my resume and write a resume for this job posting.
Yeah.
And which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but what was not great about this situation was the person didn't actually have the work experience.
Yeah.
And so the AI wrote a resume based off of the job description. So then to my eyes, it looked like, oh, wow, like, sure, they took all the boxes. Yep,
Yeah.
perfect fit. And I saw that happen with two candidates for the same role. And so it was just one of those things where it was this kind of like eye-opening moment for me where I thought, okay, this is not going away. This is something that I need to be mindful of and be thinking about what are things that we potentially need to change on our end to ensure that we don't get caught up in it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think more and more that people are posting, job adverts and that out on LinkedIn or online or whatever, on Indeed, that more and more of these bots are just going to creep in, and we're going to start seeing hundreds and hundreds of resumes that are just either perfect or need to look for spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, human fallibility.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yes, like nobody is perfect.
No.
And so like, there are things you look for when you're screening resumes, but if there's a high use of keywords or buzzwords, or the formatting looks a little off, like those are all like quick indicators that perhaps it's not, it was AI generated. And again, I think there is really a fine line between enhancement and dishonesty, right? So, and just making sure that if you're leveraging AI from a candidate perspective, that you are doing it, ethically.
Ethically, exactly that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, look, I really do appreciate your time today.
Of course. Yeah.
And your views on AI. We'll see how this transpires.
Absolutely. I know we should like pre-plan and like visit again in like 6 months or a year
6 months
and
time
talk
and
about
absolutely
what's
exchange
changed.
war stories. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks very much anyway.
Of course.
Appreciate
yes,
that.
thank you.
Thank you.